Okay, welcome to LaRouche Pack Shorts. This is the first of a series of shorts we're going to be doing on the economy and what is necessary to rebuild the U.S. economy as a manufacturing superpower for the world. Of course, a lot of people were joined today, I should say, by Brian Lantz, who's a longtime associate of Lyndon LaRouche. He's done a lot of thinking about the economy based on LaRouche's ideas and his own contributions to those. And we want to start today by looking at a brief summary of what are some of the issues that we're going to be exploring in the upcoming shorts. Now, first of all, there's a lot of things that have been out there, a lot of talk about how we got to rebuild the U.S. economy, we got to change the supply lines, we got to reshore, we got to get back to a manufacturing and so forth. But a lot of what's been said really doesn't have any basis in science or reality. And so we'd like Brian to fill us in on that. First, you've got on the one hand, the crazy proposals by Biden and the Democrats for this mishmash of an infrastructure bill and a Green New Deal. And if you can make sense of even what it is, but it misses the point fundamentally. So Brian, why don't you tell us, what fundamentally is wrong with the thinking of this whole infrastructure plan as the Democrats have presented it?
Well, at best it's sausage, but the primary problem is in both camps, the congressional Democrats have no understanding of the physical economy, how we produce, how we reproduce our society and mankind for that matter, from generation to generation, how we progress. And that means we have to increase fundamentally productivity. And here we have the Democrats raining money down on just about everything. The Green New Deal aspect is obvious. Solar, wind, you're putting more energy in than you're getting out. It's a hoax. So you're digging a hole for yourself. And that's generally the Democratic proposal. The Republicans, on the other hand, say leave it to the magic of the marketplace, and that magic has obviously given out. So we need a new approach.
So the basic problem is that it's obvious that the Democratic idea, the Green New Deal, and Biden's whole thing, as you say, raining money down on everything, or for that matter, the Federal Reserve's idea is, money printing and bond buying and so forth, and, giving banks huge amounts of money, which they then redeposit in the Federal Reserve. They've got more money than they know what to do with, and they don't know how to, nobody can borrow it for productive purposes. So that's sort of a dead end, which is leading to massive inflation and so forth. But the idea of having austerity and cutting the budget and so forth that the Republicans are saying and let the free market work it out is ridiculous. So what are the principles, as you understand them from LaRouche's work and your own investigations, should guide us in trying to develop a program, an economic program, for actually rebuilding the United States and making it a manufacturing power again?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of areas that we'll cover over the next several weeks. But just take reshoring. Reshoring to where? Where's the energy? The Northeast, there's no energy available. Texas, there's no energy for massive expansion of manufacturing. You can calculate that you need, X gigawatts of nuclear power for every 100,000 manufacturing workers. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the point is you've got to actually have the infrastructure. What LaRouche developed is a platform, more than just infrastructure. We've got to go to a new platform. So that's energy, water, look at the drought out west, but manufacturing uses a tremendous amount of water, and so on. So these are the parameters.
So when you talk about infrastructure, you're not talking about the lower level of infrastructure that the that's in this so-called infrastructure bill, roads, highways, plumbing
Yeah,
fixtures, and this kind of stuff, which we all know need to be repaired, but that's sort of like, you know, cleaning up your house when it's dirty. What did LaRouche actually mean by infrastructure? You raised the idea of platforms. What's the principle behind that?
well, we've got to go, we have to go to successively higher levels of energy flux density to maintain the growth of society, the development of society, the development of new resources, because we're always running out of old, easy to get resources. We've got to go to higher energy flux densities. That means we have to have an increasingly productive workforce, labor power, as Lynn defined, LaRouche defined labor power, the increasing productivity of labor. It's not flipping more hamburgers every hour. It's employing labor more productively, and that means giving them the tools, the higher energy flux density, if you will, tools that allow the workforce to be more productive. And that's not just directly on, you know, in a manufacturing plant. That's how much, you know, how many kilowatt hours are available, you know, to a given process. What's the availability and what cost, water and so forth. But it's from the standpoint of increasing energy flux density, and that allows for the increase of potential relative population density.
So from that standpoint, obviously this whole idea of the Green New Deal goes in exactly the opposite direction because it seems to lower the energy flux density.
Absolutely, absolutely, it's a killer. You know, I'm here in Texas. I mean, you know, we just went through the big freeze in February. You know, wind power in particular has come in a big way of Texas. In Texas, it's almost 25% of the state's energy. At times, it can be 40 or 50. It's cheap since it's heavily subsidized to build it, but it's driven out all the other power suppliers. So then, when we get hit with get clobbered with this kind of weather, suddenly everything gives up. The windmills stop turning, they freeze up, and there's nothing to replace it with. It's a good example of the insanity of unreliable intermittent power, which is what solar and wind are.
So you mentioned energy when you also mentioned water. What's the deal with water? Because we're suffering a huge drought, and people are sort of blaming it on global warming, which is ridiculous. But you know, what are you supposed to do? Just pray to the global warming gods to try and do a rain dance out in the West?
Well, as you know, Bruce, that won't work very well. Look, we got plenty of water, but it's in the oceans or it's in the rivers running into the oceans. You know, you take San Francisco, the Hetch Hetchy, which is in Yosemite Park, of all places, provides the water all the way over to San Francisco. When San Francisco's sitting right on not only San Francisco Bay, but right on the ocean. So, you know, desalinization, water can be brought in, and Hetch Hetchy water should be going to the Central Valley. I mean, that's just a simple example. But on a larger scale, as you know, NWAPA, the North American Water Alliance Project, Water Public Alliance, Power Alliance, Water and Power Alliance, is something that's been sitting on the drawing boards, that's been pulled together by engineering companies, and we updated it several times. So that's bringing water down from Alaska, from water that's running off into the Arctic. So there's water everywhere. And once you start bringing it in over land, it begins transforming the climate, increasing rainfall, and reproduces an excellent environment.
And that's obviously tied up with the energy. So we got energy, water, what else? Transportation?
Transportation, absolutely. We've got to, electric toys are not going to get us to the 22nd century, much less through the 21st century. We're going to need a massive upgrading of our entire rail system, freight and public, and it just can't be pumping more money into Amtrak. Amtrak uses existing freight rail to move on across the country, outside of the Northeast corridor. So we've got to massively expand rail, but we've got to move to high-speed rail, and obviously freight rail's got to increase in speed as well. That's an example of what we have to do.
So this also gets involved in energy, and then the issue is advanced technologies, things we don't even have available to us. What can we do to get the kind of investment in frontier technologies?
Well, again, as you know, Bruce, fusion energy is LaRouche advocated since the 1970s, and now we have the National Academy of Sciences saying we could have fusion power to the grid by 2035, and spelling out a detailed program worked through by engineers and so forth to do that. And then there's a lot of other private investment, private companies, and of course companies all over the world and governments investing in fusion. That's the next huge breakthrough. But we've got to multiply nuclear power plants, advanced ones, AP1000s, but going beyond that to the sodium-cooled reactors and all the rest, and to modular nuclear reactors. A problem we have is we don't have the forging capacity for the big nuclear power plants. The Vogtle nuclear power plant in Georgia that's under construction, plants 3 and 4, virtually everything had to come in from outside the United States for that. Modular, we have the manufacturing capacity to do that. We'd have to upgrade it massively. Anyway, those are some examples.
Well, so this is quite an ambitious project, and I think you've only touched the surface of what we really need, but it sure should open our listeners' eyes to how stupid and petty and minuscule and Lilliputian the proposals that are coming out of Washington. I mean, the advantage that we have is that the American people are pretty fed up with what's coming out of Washington anyway, so I think we need to give them ability to sort of particularize and get out these, get a sense in their own minds as to what kind of, what an actual real infrastructure project we should be demanding. Trump has a very large political movement out there, and really it needs to start thinking really big. Trump thought big a lot in his presidency about Artemis, going to the moon, what he did around Operation Warp Speed, and we can take up more of that in future discussions, but it really gives a quite opening. So we're sort of running out of time for this short. I think what we'll do is take up each one of these things in a little more detail to really sort of rev up the optimism in the country about what we really should be demanding, instead of going tit for tat and back on this silliness that's going on in Washington. People can ignore that. Trump's already told them to forget the infrastructure deal, and it's not going to really make, it's going to make a negligible difference, to repair a few bridges and roads here, although it should be done. But let's talk about what really needs to be done.
Absolutely. The future.
Yeah, the future. And just sum up for us, that's a good place to sum up as to what sort of is the real principle, the guiding principle that the American people really should demand, instead of being fed this garbage. But from your perspective and what you know about what LaRouche taught us about economics.
Well, knowing economics, LaRouche's economics in particular, the key here, I think we can agree, is if the American people understand the physical economic process, if they understand how to make decisions, to deliberate upon policies on economics, then the Congress won't be able to lie to them the way they are right now, Republicans or Democrats in the Congress. I think that's first of all. Secondly, we've always got to be aiming for the future. Lincoln was, as you know, Lincoln worked out the figures on the growth of the U.S. population looking into the 20th and 21st century. Kennedy spoke of this in terms of the dam projects that he was supporting and speaking at, promoting that these dams are going to be for our children. That's the the concept that we've got to get back to, where we're making decisions today to produce what's needed for tomorrow and the tomorrows after that.
That's very well said. I think that's a good place to end for today. And thank you for joining us on LaRouche Pack Shorts. And we'll be back to you as soon as we can with more shorts to get your mind thinking in the future and stop listening to the garbage that's coming out of Washington.
Look forward to it.
Good. Thank you very much.